Yesterday, around 5:30 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, we learned about an explosion just outside the Manchester Arena in Manchester, England, where an Ariana Grande concert was wrapping up around 10:30 at night, their time, local time. We now know that this was the deadliest terrorist attack in Britain since 2005. The death toll is at 22 as of just a few minutes ago, with 59 people hospitalized, some with life-threatening injuries. As soon as it was made clear that this was a suicide bombing, not some kind of mishap, a gas explosion or something like that, it immediately was clear that this was the MO of radical Sunni Muslim radicals. And this is important. This is the reality. When you ask who is currently doing suicide bombings in this fashion in public places, it is the style of radical Sunnis. This includes ISIS, it includes Saudi extremists, and indeed, the perpetrator, Salman Abedi, known to British authorities, a 23-year-old man, is the believed attacker that has been identified by British police, known as a radical Muslim in the United Kingdom. A second 23-year-old man has been detained for possible connections to the incident. We don't know too much about that yet. ISIS has taken responsibility for the attack. Does not necessarily mean anything in particular operationally until we find out more about the degree of what that responsibility is or may be. We've just got to be honest here, Pat. And, I do not believe that there is anything fundamentally wrong with saying I am not surprised by what we've learned about the perpetrator here. The pattern was not indicative of a young British member of the local Skeptics Society. No one thought upon hearing the MO of this attack that it sounds like something a Jewish woman would do, a British Jewish woman. Immediately, it was the signature of a Sunni Muslim man radicalized in the style of ISIS or the Saudi terrorists who carried out 9/11, and indeed it was. And further, the sophistication of the bomb, which according to early reports was packed with nails and other would-be shrapnel, would suggest some degree of collaboration beyond just the suicide bomber themselves. And again, we don't yet know how far that collaboration or coordination goes. A few thoughts here. This was an Ariana Grande concert. This is filled with little kids, more girls than boys, preteens, teenagers. Imagine, we are talking about an attempt here to target a place where we know young people are going to be. Imagine your daughter going to a concert with her friends, or my little sister who's 13 going to this concert, and then this happening as they're leaving. A girl as young as 8 years old was killed here, and terror works. The likelihood at being killed at a music concert remains almost zero. Consider the number of concerts that there were yesterday. Consider the number in the last year. But now, because of this one incident, this is on our minds. Parents will say, no, you can't go to that show, even though the risk of this happening is still infinitesimally low. This is exactly what it's designed to do. And Miley Cyrus is now saying she's going to cancel parts of her tour.
That's not good news. Unfortunately, ISIS has a history of going after women and children. In this case, there was a victim as young as 8 years old. And that's actually a more new phenomenon. Other political terrorist organizations don't deliberately go after women and children because they just don't think it's going to reflect well towards their cause.
And so that's another reason why there are some, and every so-called terrorism expert, national security expert comes out of the woodwork every time this happens, and there's this feeling that some kind of red line has been crossed because Ariana Grande concert, 8-year-old girl who was killed. There's another aspect to this which is less subjective and more objective, which is this happened outside of security. This is equivalent to in an airport before you've passed TSA screening, where we have seen some terrorist acts done. Imagine at many of our sports stadiums, including even here in Boston, how do you secure some of these areas? Because you have, at Fenway Park where the Red Sox play, you now have had the security perimeter in some parts moved outside of the stadium. So just to get onto, I believe it's Yawkey Way, you have to go through security before even getting onto that street. But just outside of that is still just as crowded of an area. And I've been saying it for over a year now. We expected ISIS to lose territory in the Middle East. But how do you stop or rather prevent these types of incidents?
That's where the conversation inevitably goes to. The issue here is that not only do you have arenas, but oftentimes they are subway stations and train stations
Right.
directly beneath them, and that's what was the case in this Manchester arena. Also, same thing with Penn Station, right below
Madison Square Garden. Yeah.
So, you can have checkpoints and different security apparatuses, but if you're dealing with a train station, you can't really impede people's ability to move.
It's incredibly difficult. We have that here in Boston now that you mention it. I mean, the TD Garden, where the Boston Celtics and Boston Bruins play, is above North Station,
Yes.
which is a prominent train, commuter rail. I don't know if Amtrak goes out of there. I think Amtrak is mostly out of South Station, but there may be some going out of there. So this is a sort of operational reality. And again, the mere fact that we are now talking about this, that is the point of these incidents. That is the entire point of carrying out something like this. Now parents are saying, you can't go to the concert. People are saying, hey, what's the difference between an event that's a music show and an event that is a sporting event? What about the fact that there are mass transit stations and anybody can get onto a train or subway with effectively no security process whatsoever in most of the United States and most of Europe as well? This is exactly the point. It's a horrible, horrible tragedy. I'm sort of at a loss as to what else we can really say about it, but this is clearly something that is the growing MO of radical groups like ISIS, and I don't know what the next step is as far as this goes.